Hey everybody, welcome back to the wood shop. Today we're going to be building a piece of furniture.
My dad recently renovated their bathroom. They have a small space right behind the door next to the bathroom vanity that'd be perfect for a small cabinet.
He sent us a sketch of this cabinet along with all the dimensions, and we're going to be using a mixture of different types of wood. We'll be using a 2x4 construction grade, some plywood, and some aspen wood. We've never used that before.
And we're going to be painting this cabinet. They'd like for it to be a really nice white color, nice and clean, pretty for a bathroom. We've drawn up our plans. We're excited to get to work, so let's get started. The four legs for this cabinet are going to run from the top of the cabinet all the way to the floor, so they're also going to serve as part of the frame. They're going to be 35 inches tall, and we're going to cut them from this 2x4 piece of lumber. You could just buy 2x2 posts from your local hardware store, but we had this 2x4 on hand and it saved us a little bit of money, so we're going to do this. We're going to mark it at 71 inches. That'll give us some room to square off the end of the board, and it'll also give us some room to cut it down the middle. And I'm just going to run this over to the miter saw, give it a cut, and then Bryan is going to rip it on the table saw.
Now the first step to making these legs, we're going to remove 3/16 of an inch from each side of this 2x4. Now a 2x4 is really 3.5 inches wide, so we need to make it 3 inches wide in order to get 2.5 inch pieces. So we'll cut 3/16 of an inch from each side. That will leave an 1/8 inch in the center. We'll remove that with the saw blade when we split it in half.
Now that we have two equal posts, we're going to cut four 35-inch legs.
Okay, our leg posts are all cut out and ready to go. I'll go ahead and tell you the dimensions of the cabinet since we've not told you yet. The height is 36 inches, the width 24, and the depth is 14. Now the top will be exactly 24 by 14. We're going to inset all four sides at a 1/2 inch, so we'll have a 1/2 inch overhang with the top. Now it's time to cut the plywood for the side panels. Now the side panels will be 13 inches wide, and since our posts are already 1.5 inches on each side, that takes away 3 inches. So we have to cut two panels that are 10 inches by 30 inches long. Now with this piece of plywood that was left over after we cut our side panels off, we're going to use this to make the floor of the cabinet. Now it will be 11.5 inches by 20 inches.
All right, we've got our plywood cut for our side panels, and what we're going to do to help fasten everything together is drill some pocket holes down the sides of each of these pieces. As you can see here, I've got this clamped in, and what I've done is drawn marks 1 inch from the top, 1 inch from the bottom, and we've got 3 more equal distance down the side of each panel. So I'm going to flip this around and give you a demonstration of how to drill pocket holes. All right, so as you can see, we've got our workpiece clamped in here. Our guide is set at 3/4 of an inch because this is 3/4 inch plywood. Also, our drill bit here, the stop collar, has been set to 3/4 of an inch as well. It looks like, as you can tell here, we've got another workpiece sitting under here just for a little support for this piece. This comes up about 3/4 of an inch, so that gives us a little support that we need. And I've got marks like I said, drawn on each side of this workpiece, and I'm just eyeballing. I'm using the hole here that's marked A, so I'm going to keep sliding the workpiece down and drilling holes. So let's give this a try. Dusty work. And then we'll just unplant this. Like I said, I'm just eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. There you go.
Now it's time to make the stretchers that go on top of the cabinet. We have a scrap piece of plywood left over here, and we'll cut this to 20 inches, the same size as the floor, and then rip it in half, and we'll put a stretcher on the front and one on the back.
All right, before we start assembling the cabinet, we're going to put some pocket holes in our stretchers, and I've got my piece set up here. We're going to use holes A and C. Then I'll just flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. All right, up next, the first thing we're going to do for our cabinet build is to construct the side panels. So let's get some wood glue. And we have some 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws for softwood, plywood. That's what we're using right here is some plywood. And our legs are made from pine. These panels are going to be inset back into the posts, so we do have some extra plywood underneath propping it up. We've moved into the floor to continue assembly of our cabinet. It was a little strange to try to reach in on top, and everything wasn't real handy on top of the workbench. So now we're down here, and we've measured up 2.5 inches from the bottom of our panel here. And because we're going to put a face frame on this, right?
Right. We've got the bottom here is going to set back 1.5 inches from this. It'll actually be part of the design of the cabinet. There'll be 3/4 inch of this visible when it's all done, but the face frame will take up 3/4 inch of this space once it's here. And now we're going to attach our stretchers that go across the top. We're going to go ahead now and cut us a shelf to put in this cabinet. Now the customer may actually want 2 shelves. We're not sure at this time, but if they do, we'll cut another one later.
So we've got our shelf cut here, and we are going to install this. We've drilled some pocket holes into the bottom of our shelf, and we've made marks 12 inches up from the floor of the cabinet. So we're going to get this in place. Got a nice rubber mallet here. Got a pretty snug fit. I called my dad because customer and asked if they really did want another shelf in the cabinet, and they decided that they did. So we have cut another piece of plywood, drilled some pocket holes, and installed this shelf. So we've got one that's just a little more than 11 inches tall, one that's about 8, and one that's about 6. So it'll give them a variety of storage options.
Well, now it's time to head back over to the workbench and get started on the face frame.
All right, so let's talk about the materials we're using for our face frame and our doors. This is some nice aspen wood. It's related to poplar, and it is just beautiful. We're going to paint it anyway, which is kind of a shame. Look at that. It's just so bright, white, clean. Looks actually pretty nice for painting. So that's what we're using today. It's kind of inexpensive, not much more expensive than some pine, but really, really some nice wood. We need 2 30-inch pieces for the stiles for our face frame, and then we need a couple of pieces that are 14 and 7/8 for the rails. We are going to use a couple of different widths for the rails. We've got this is a 1x2, and we're going to use this for the top rail, and then we have a 1x3 that we're going to use for the bottom. So let's get started with some measurements and do some cutting. All right, we have the pieces cut for our face frame, and we've marked some measurements for some pocket holes. We're going to drill those, put together our face frame, and then attach it to the cabinet.
Now we'll assemble this face frame using wood glue and pocket hole screws, and we will be using our face clamp to hold it all together.
So the next thing we're going to do is cut the boards for the top of the cabinet. We have some more aspen here. It's 1x4x4, and they need to be 14, the actual panel for the top needs to be 14 inches by 24 inches long. So what we're going to do is cut these into 4 sections, and it's really great. We're going to have minimal waste because they are 48 inches long, and we need 4 24-inch sections. So we're just going to essentially cut these in half. All right, we have 4 pieces cut now for the top of our cabinet, and we're going to make this into a solid panel by edge jointing these boards with some wood glue and pocket hole screws. So we'll start, we've already marked some measurements here for our pocket holes, so we'll get started with that.
Now that our top is done, I'm going to flush trim each side of it by running it through the table saw, just taking off maybe half a blade width. For the next step in our cabinet, we did have some leftover aspen here,
And what we're going to do is cut these to 10 inches, and we're going to create some embellishments along each of the side panels. We did use pocket holes to secure the top a little bit more, so it's going to help cover those up, and we just think it's going to look really nice. Okay, so now we have some pieces of aspen here we're using for our embellishments for the sides of the cabinet. We're going to apply some wood glue on here, take a little rubber mallet here and hammer them in place, and then securely fasten them with some screws.
Okay, the next thing we're going to do now before we sand this cabinet, we're going to put these little leveling feet on each of the legs. That way, you know, if you got an unlevel floor or something, you can get your cabinet good and level. You won't have any rocking or anything. We have to start out by drilling a 5/16 hole in each one of these legs. I believe an inch and an eighth, inch and a quarter, something like that deep.
Now that the body of our cabinet is constructed, we're going to give it a light sanding with some 120 grit.
Alright, now before this bottom shelf gets sanded, we are going to plug these pocket holes that we had to attach our face frame with. Our Craig jig came with some of these pre-cut dowels, so we'll go ahead and use those instead of cutting our own. We'll glue them in, then they'll be sanded off flush. Now while we wait for the glue to dry on those pocket hole plugs, we might as well go ahead and get started on our doors. Now we're going to make the door frames out of this 1x2 aspen, and we have two 6-foot boards of this. Now the doors are going to be 8.5 inches by 28 inches, so we can get one whole door frame out of each 6-foot board. Now the first thing we're going to do is start by cutting the channel the whole length of this board, 3/4 of an inch deep. That will serve as the housing for the door panel and as well as the mortise for the tenons that will be on the ends of each rail. The door panels that we have are 3/16 of an inch thick. That's like a handy panel you get at your big box store. So we're going to have to run this through once and take our blades width 1/8 of an inch out, and then come back and just get like a 1/2 blade's thickness on that second pass. We'll do each board one at a time, and hopefully this will work out.
The next thing we're going to do, now that we have the channels cut in each of our boards, is to cut the rails and the stiles for the door frames. The rails will be 7 inches each, and that's to give us a little bit of room for the tenons, and the stiles will be 28 inches long. So let's go ahead and get those cut out.
Okay, now it's time to cut the tenons for the rails of our door. We've measured over 3/4 of an inch from the end here. That's how long the tenon will need to be. The blade height is set right up to the channel because that's the width that the tenon will need to be, the same width as this channel is. We'll make individual passes over the blade. It'll take about 6 on each side to get our tenon cut out. Once we get one side cut, we'll flip it over and do it again. Now it's time to cut the panels that go inside of our door frames. Each panel is going to be 7 inches by 26 1/4. We had some scrap project wood left over here. This is a project panel, and it's 3/16 of an inch wide, which is what we cut the channel for already. And it should make some pretty nice door panels.
Alright, we have the pieces cut out for each of our doors, so what we're going to do now is apply a little bit of glue, fit them all together, and apply clamps and let them dry overnight.
Ordinarily, when you build a cabinet door, you would use 1/4 inch panels, but these doors are so slim, we went with the 3/16 panel because we already had it laying around here in the shop, so we might as well use it. And we're using it for the back of the cabinet too. Well, we ran out of memory right in the middle of putting these doors together, and we had to get these clamps on before the glue dried. So we went ahead and clamped it. Then we emptied our memory card, then came back.
So let's go ahead and take off these clamps. We're going to do some sanding on these doors, and then we're going to get to work on painting both our doors and the cabinet. There's the door.
Well, it's almost time to paint these doors, but before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill the hole for the screw that goes into these pulls. That way we won't scar up the paint doing the drilling later.
Alright, it's time to start painting our doors and our cabinet. We're just going to use some simple white paint. This is a semi-gloss. We're going to use a brush to kind of get down in the crevices of the doors, and then we're going to use a roller to make sure that we have a really smooth application. We've got the first coat of paint on the doors. We're going to move on to the cabinet. Same thing, white paint, a brush, and a roller. Let's get to work.
Alright, now we've got our cabinet and our doors painted, took 2 coats. We also put some spray lacquer on top for a little extra protection. And it's time now to attach the back panel. We went ahead and painted this too. Now this is the same panel we used for the doors. It's just that 3/16 inch thick project panel you get at your big box store. I'm going to go ahead and nail this on now with 1-inch wire nails. Well, we're getting close now. The next step, we're going to mount these hinges to the doors. And these are a plain flush mount self-closing hinge. And hopefully these screws are small enough so we'll not have to drill pilot holes. Alright, it's time now to attach our door to our cabinet. I went ahead and drilled pilot holes for these since these screws are quite a bit bigger than the others.
Alright, before we put the knobs on our doors, we're just going to put these little adhesive cushions in the upper corner of each door. It'll help it to have less of an impact when it closes against the face frame.
Well, that wraps up our latest project here in the wood shop. We have a cabinet.
We think it turned out really beautiful. It's got a classic white finish and antique bronze hardware. This would provide extra storage for any room in the home. As you can see inside, we have different sizes of shelving. So you could store, in the bathroom, you could put maybe towels in here. In the living room, maybe you wanted to store media or books. And you could even use it in the kitchen as maybe some extra pantry space. So we really, really do like how this cabinet has turned out.
Now we use several different types of wood on this. We've got pine 2x4s for the legs. The side panels and the shelves on the inside are all made out of 3/4 inch plywood. And we used aspen wood to make the space frame and the top. And the door panels and the back are made out of some 3/16 inch project board that you get at your big box store.
This has been a really fun project, one of the more sizable projects that we've done, and we're really excited with the results. If you like today's video and you want to see more stuff that we're making here in the shop, be sure to like and subscribe. We're also on Facebook at Wood Songs by Russell, so meet us over there. Thanks again for joining us. Happy woodworking!